So the director of the CBA went to the Vice-Chancellor of the university.
Mm-hmm.
We have been in contact with the University of York Vice-Chancellor and the head of the Department of Archaeology at the university, and will be making no further comments on this story in the interest of protecting the individuals involved from further unnecessary coverage.
Protecting?
Yes.
So her name's out there, and they're protecting her by not talking about it?
Yes.
When they could be promoting her great work, they could be pointing out how wonderful the course is. They could be saying this is not remotely controversial. This is actually good practice and standard practice. And here's all the reasons why. Protecting by being silent.
Yes.
Great job. Hello and welcome back to Watching Brief for the week of the 6th of June 2022. As Mr. Brockman just reminded me, the week of D-Day, indeed. D-Day, which apparently stands for Day, doesn't it? D-Day?
Yeah, it has no, apparently it has no greater significance. It's the day.
Yeah, the day. Yeah. The D-Day.
Yeah.
Anyway, as you've just seen, my lovely co-host, Mr. Andy Brockman, is here with me, and our Watching Brief continues. And this week, really, there's only one thing that's been dominating the archaeological news agenda in terms of the conversation and Twitter and other social media. And also, actually, this has bled through to a more generalized public awareness as well, with people going, is this real? Is this really happening? Where national newspapers here in the UK, not for the first time, have been accusing archaeologists of being scaredy cats, coddled,
Actually, can I interrupt there, Marc, for a second? Because I've actually been preparing. Obviously, it is the main topic this week, so I've been reading the new edition of the famous Renfrew and Barn Introduction to Archaeology.
Yep.
In preparation,
also known as the Bible.
Also known as the Bible in preparation. This is the cover of the new edition. Seriously,
that's not Renfrew and Barn. That's not Renfrew and Barn. Yeah, for those of you listening, Andy just held up a copy of the Star, a tabloid newspaper here in the UK, which had on its front page a couple of days ago a digital sort of composition, including a mummy screaming at you, the reader, with "I want my mummy," and apparently archaeologists being scared when they're told that they're going to be dealing with dead bodies in class. And the thing is, as you were saying, this story has been covered by national newspapers, important national newspapers, and the Daily Star. So the Daily Star isn't the most important newspaper in our retinue, but it is nonetheless front page news on their newspaper. But they were picking up on a story in the Daily Mail and also in turn the Telegraph. The Mail Online, for example, had a headline: "Exclusive, grave concern." They had to squeeze in that pun, didn't they? University of York puts, quote, "woke," end quote, "trigger warnings on archaeology courses, alerting students that they will see images and videos of human remains." And the Telegraph, in conjunction, said archaeology students given dead bodies trigger warning. And I suppose, there are several steps to this conversation and several queries I have. First of all, in terms of what are the response to this, and also actually what the sector isn't doing about the response to this. But what is a trigger warning, Andy? I mean, how long have they been around in terms of dead bodies in archaeology, and are they for scared people? Are they to make sure that archaeologists don't run out of the room weeping?
The short answer to that is no. They are. They're not all. Trigger warnings is a phrase that has really now been co-opted by right-wing commentators as part of the quotes culture war. The idea being that suggesting that a course or a book or a film or something might have sensitive content that might upset some people is somehow intellectually lazy, cowardly, leading to the sort of the undermining of Western civilization. It's you know, everybody will be familiar with the kind of content warning is a better phrase. It's what the you know, when you're watching a program, when you're watching television and the announcement in front of a program says this program contains scenes which some viewers may find upsetting. That's that, you know, that is there because you have a general audience. You don't know what their mental state is. You don't know what their background is. And if, for example, it's discussing sensitive issues, for example, to do with violence, sexuality, combination of the two, that, you know,
neonatal loss, for example, if you've just lost a baby.
Anything like that. It's sensible. It comes under duty of care, right? And when it comes to university content warnings, it's the same thing. It's about duty of care.
We should also sort of frame this in a slightly longer view as well, in so much as even before it became sort of fashionable to have, you know, not fashionable is the wrong word. It was fashionable of people to point out that universities and other places were having content warnings. We also, especially in a broader anthropological sense, had a growing awareness of dealing with the fact that other cultures handle, especially photographs of not even just human remains, photographs of people who are no longer with us in very particular ways. A bit of a taboo on showing a photo of someone who's no longer alive. We've had to have an awareness of how people might view content and images that may otherwise seem relatively uncontroversial for a while. This isn't new in that sense.
No, you're right, and this is the other half of the content warning, which you're quite rightly pointing out. It's the idea that in a sector, the heritage sector, the archaeological sector, where we're dealing with many different cultures of the present and the past, that there are different cultural norms, and that we need to be aware of those and treat them sensitively. It's just common courtesy, really. That's what we're talking about here. We're talking about a duty of care to our fellow human beings and common courtesy. That we don't do something that's gratuitously offensive without realizing it.
No.
And I think that's just being nice to people, you know. So there are serious issues, you know, and it has been co-opted by being misrepresented by certain culture warriors, particularly when they're in need of a cheap headline. And that's what's been happening this week, and I guess we probably ought to go on to explain the background to this, and then perhaps I can sort of deconstruct how it's done by I've got the Mail headline in front of me, which we will link to. There has been a move on social media not to link to these things, not to give them extra publicity. In fact, I just think that's when you're discussing an issue, you have to discuss the original sources. And it's already out there. The damage is done, and we'll come back to that in a minute when we talk about the response of the sector.
Well, certainly. So what? Why therefore then? Why is this happening? Obviously, we'll talk about the mechanisms in a second, but why archaeology? Why once again, for the second time in at least 6 years, are archaeologists being targeted in this way, especially in universities? Because it's interesting how the other thing to bear in mind here is that you can't always predict either how you're going to respond to imagery of deceased people. I remember once, and I might have told this story before, I was walking along a corridor in my university's archaeology department, and someone was there on an open day, and they collapsed when they went into the bones room. This person they had no idea that they were squeamish or that they'd have a moment, and apparently it was just a moment. So even even members of the public who are not yet even at the university can have these reactions. Why though are archaeologists being targeted, and by whom, and for what purpose?
because they're perceived by certain people for political reasons as members of the metropolitan liberal elite.
I see.
That blob of opposition to
common sense history
policies. To right-wing populism, aka common sense history. It's a front in the culture war. It's the archaeological theatre of the culture war. For certain news outlets, for certain commentators. Back in 2016, there was a similar row over in that case, a conflict archaeology course at University College London, led by a very prestigious conflict archaeologist, someone who is one of the leading scholars in the game. And exactly the same charges were laid by the Daily Mail again, Spiked magazine, Spiked Online, which is a right-wing libertarian magazine that morphed out of the Revolutionary Communist Party that was disbanded in the early noughties. And very, very similar arguments played out. On that occasion, I wrote a piece about it, which we'll link to. Tony Pollard, the conflict archaeologist, and Professor Tony Pollard from the University of Glasgow, also responded to it. I think our colleague Howard Williams has written about it, and again, he's a specialist in mortuary archaeology. All explaining in words of one, this isn't woke. It's actually a duty of care. It's respecting people who might have, for example, underlying PTSD that hasn't been declared, or they're not even, as you say, they're not even aware of.
No.
And in that case, for example, in conflict archaeology, the students, and I've been there, done that. If you're excavating on battlefields, you certainly come across human remains. If you dig on the First World War battlefields, as I've done, you come across fragmented human remains, which really pulls you up short.
Yeah, disarticulated and
scattered. Disarticulated is the jargon word.
Yeah.
And that's before we get on.
Sorry. I was being a liberal elite there. Sorry. Oh.
No, look. It's exactly that. The point is, that is standard battlefield conflict archaeology. That's before you get on to people who are currently working, for example, on war crimes investigations and on work related to sites related that were involved in the Holocaust.
Yeah.
So
or for example, people of roughly my age who may have been in and around mass graves in places like Bosnia, for example.
Exactly that. Yeah. Yes, I got Bosnia, Iraq, Syria, anywhere where crimes against humanity have taken place and UN bodies are investigating.
Yeah.
And it's really, what we have to remember as well is, the people who are doing this, the people on these courses, people who go on to work in that line of investigation, UN war crimes, international court. It is an absolutely crucial part of international jurisdiction. You can't bring a war criminal to court without the evidence.
No.
And so they're doing really, really valuable work. And so it's absolute, but also it's quite, I listened to a talk once about the Bosnian war crimes investigations. And there was one description of the site that was investigated by the forensic archaeologists there that I get flashbacks to still, even though I was just listening to a lecture.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, this is serious stuff.
Yeah.
And for archaeologists who are teaching this material to use content warnings is absolutely appropriate.
So, I'm sort of rephrasing the same question here, but I think it's important to really try and tie this down. Why the interaction with the dead that is seen as an area of kind of, being like a wet tissue or something? Oh, you can't handle it. And yet the people writing this stuff, if you just beamed them Star Trek style in front of a mass grave, they'd probably have a freak out. So why is it this particular issue that's seen as like as a gauge of your ability to handle the real world, or however it is they want to phrase it?
Okay, if you're going to go after archaeologists, you're not going to go after archaeologists because they write academic monographs about BB2 pottery.
No,
right? Because that won't connect with the public.
No, and even though it's your favorite Roman pottery.
Absolutely, BB2 is wonderful.
Yeah.
But no, look. What you are going to do, though, if you see representatives of the metropolitan liberal elite or whatever we're going to call them this week, if you're going to attack them in a mainstream news outlet like the Mail or the Telegraph or the Star, which has a circulation of over 250,000, so it's not it's like a sort of lads mag. It's like the sort of tabloid Viz. So but look, outlets like that aren't going to go after, like I said, an arcane piece of archaeological study. What they are going to go after is something that connects directly with the public that they're addressing, and right back to say the word Tutankhamun to a member of the public, and they probably immediately think of that gold death mask.
Yes.
One of my first archaeological memories is going to the British Museum and going to the mummy section of the ancient Egyptian galleries. It's what people do. It's what people see. Archaeologists dig up people, as Mortimer Wheeler famously said. And so it is an immediate connection, but also death is one of the most, we all die eventually. Most people are scared of the prospect. It's made light of, but it's also one of the most intimate things we do as human beings. Anybody who's been through a bereavement knows that. So,
but also, as the Star says here in their editorial on the story, times have certainly changed. Back in the day, you would make a beeline for those grisly remains if you had to go on a school trip to a museum. Otherwise, you just had to spend the day looking at endless, boring, broken pots and arrowheads. It's time students joined the real world, they say. Anyone who studies ancient Egyptian mummies, of course, that's all archaeologists really look at, may well have to look at dead bodies, they say. You don't have to be a brainiac to figure that out. So So in that sense, it's a relatable, dealing with human remains is something that everyone has done and does do. It's something that for example, turns up. I imagine people might think of Indiana Jones, where you got the guy who's been skewered on a trap at the beginning of that movie, and that's fun. It's entertaining. This person's thinking about school trips to museums. Hopefully they presumably they went on higher in their education and got actually a journalistic degree or something at some point. But that's their level of interaction, and that's what they're inviting the reader to think about, is this sort of end user point, this sort of entertainment value element of human remains, as opposed to actually discovery, investigation, consideration, and in some way dissemination, whether that's through a form of presentation or just publication.
Absolutely. Now, interestingly, you framed that part of our conversation using the Star's editorial. Now, I think most people understand that in journalism there are two essential strands. One is editorial and opinion, op-ed, as it's called in the jargon, and the other is the news content. And what is interesting about this story, and I'm going to just deconstruct a bit of the Mail story, because what they're doing in very consciously, it's very clever, it's very calculated, is deliberately mixing op-ed with news. The news item is that they're citing a course at York University where students are given a content warning because the course contains videos and images of human remains.
Yes.
A perfectly standard, absolutely legitimate part of the university's duty of care. Right? Now, what the Mail does with that, and what the Telegraph did with it, and what the Star then picked up with that front page, which is actually quite funny, first of all, it goes exclusive,
Mm-hmm.
right? So this is immediately saying to the reader, this is really important. Pay attention. And then it goes, that exclusive is in block caps. Then it goes into grave concern, exclamation mark.
Mm.
So it's even more important. Something absolutely crucial to the life of the nation is going to be revealed in the next few paragraphs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then there's the big reveal. University of York puts, quote, woke trigger warning on archaeology course, alerting students they will see, quote, images and videos of human remains.
Hmm.
So there's an immediate value judgment there. The head, it's teed up it's going to be a big story.
Hmm.
It then reveals the story, but with a value judgment, an editorial judgment about what the story represents. So it's telling the reader straight away, you're going to hear another story about, the woke.
Yeah, sloppy.
So just and again, it's classic journalistic writing. And I wish archaeologists would learn more about how journalists write, because sometimes, the way archaeologists write could be influenced to the better for it, because that is a really crisp laying out of your thesis, right? And then it goes into bullet points. University of York unearthed ridicule for its warning for archaeology course. Now, okay, we've already had a pun, grave concern. We've got another pun there, unearthed ridicule.
Mm-hmm.
Which not earned ridicule or gained ridicule, but unearthed ridicule. So what they're doing, they're playing with the idea that archaeology is somehow something to be made fun of, right? And then the university sounded alarm over, quotes, images and videos of human remains. Again, part of its duty of care. But critic urged students to dig deep, and if they try, wanted to learn module. Otherwise, and then this is the other thing. This is teeing up another part of the article. Otherwise, one MP suggested perhaps they should consider another course.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So you've had the headline. You've had the 4 bullet points which lay out the thesis. Then you go into the first paragraph, which is it's classic tabloid writing. It's 1 sentence paragraphs. We've got a woke university faces ridicule after slapping a trigger warning on one of its archaeology courses, alerting students that they may see images of human remains. So again, it's the value judgment, the woke. University equals woke. University equals left-wing, elite, intelligentsia, doesn't connect with ordinary people, doesn't connect with the values of ordinary people. That's what all this is all about. And then it talks about a bizarre flag. It talks about it names the course. It then cites department heads risked being accused of patronizing its budding Indiana Joneses. Now, there's there's another immediate connection with a non-archaeological audience. Indiana Jones is archaeology for many people. Yeah, who the Indiana Jones movies could, because Indy is named as an archaeologist in the movies. Now, okay, we might criticize the conduct of field work, but hey, if I was going up against Nazis, I'd carry a whip and a pistol probably.
Yeah, but to be fair, you'd also do proper site recording, at least take some photos. You'd want to interview the medieval guy who's immortal, get some takes on what life was really like. Come on, Mike.
Look, the whole thing is photographed because it's a blooming film.
Yeah, well, okay, I suppose in that sense, Spielberg is an amazing ethnographer, I guess, maybe, I don't know.
Exactly. The Indiana Jones is the ethnography of archaeology. Discuss.
Yeah. But the point is there's this hint that there is a budding generation that wants to go out there and have adventures, but our universities are stopping them because of liberal policies or whatever, halting their growth or halting their awareness. But there's also this implication that dealing with the dead, dealing with human remains, is normal. It's like the idea of an MP supposedly saying, "Oh, well, maybe they should just go and consider a different course." I remember having a conversation, a little bit of pillow talk with Mrs. Soup one morning, Sunday morning.
Content warning.
Content warning for pillow talk. Yeah, it was Sunday morning, and I had just been, I don't know, I was reading something on my phone, and then I sort of turned to her and went, "You know that feeling that you get when you're holding a human skull?" And she sort of closed her book, turned to me and went, "No."
Yeah, but I happen to know. I happen to know our viewer may not. That Mrs. Soup is a classicist, so normally handles books rather than skulls.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, she was. Yeah, in her former life, she was a classicist. So in that sense, it is not normal, and the very fact that I, as an archaeologist, actually forgot for a moment that actually most people that I know in my life have never touched a human bone, that even their own bones they remained safely within their own flesh, is important, because it also means that you might just sort of stroll in a lecture context into saying something that you think is entirely normal to people who are not yet familiar with any aspect of what you're about to talk to them about. So there's something there as well. Culturally, archaeologists can be, for want of a better word, desensitized to this stuff as well. It's not just that we're going, "Oh no," and warning people. It's also a case of we need to remind ourselves, actually, it's not normal to handle bones. It's something that is unique and that is connected to our particular study.
But it's also something which people who are in that situation develop mechanisms for dealing with. I won't say coping with, for dealing with.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but I mean, I recall conversations, including within my own family, people working, for example, in medicine and emergency services, people in my circle, stories which I would not repeat now, in terms of the jet black humor that those people in those situations develop as a mechanism for dealing with their day-to-day work.
Yeah.
Which to a civilian outside of that role seem sometimes grotesque, offensive, whatever. But it's one of the ways that our minds develop to cope with those situations, for want of a better word. But look, can I take it back to the mail story? Because I think there's another strand to it, which is, again, absolutely typical tabloid, which sets this out as basically an opinion-led hit job rather than a news story, right? Because after mentioning the Indiana Joneses in the very next paragraph, and I'm not going to name the person, but it does name the course leader specifically, and then quotes from the course description, and then quotes again the content warning, and then it goes on to quote an MP. Now, so you've got an ad hominem attack, effectively, which is setting one individual up as the target to represent the entire, professional ethic of the archaeological sector. Right? And it then takes the charge to one of our legislators, an MP. Now, I would suggest that the MP concerned bears a little inspection himself, because the MP concerned is called Andrew Bridgen. And he is quoted as saying, "If the archaeology students are worried about seeing human remains, perhaps they should have considered another course." And, I know, maybe the audience knows, that Andrew Bridgen is an MP who is known as what is known as a rent-a-quote. He's in the address books of journalists because whatever the subject, he will give you an opinion on it. And he'll give you an opinion on it from a right of centre, conservative, populist, Brexit point of view. Right. So you're not going to an MP for an objective opinion, or an MP with any expertise in the particular subject at all. You're going to him because you know what product he's going to deliver for your article.
Yes. Yeah.
And
so the whole thing has been manufactured then. The whole thing has been manufactured, and as for example, Howard Williams, as we talked about a little earlier, he pointed out on his TikTok video, which I'll link below, that for a while now, and we've heard this from a few different contacts, a while now, there have been FOI requests going into universities, freedom of information requests, seeking details on courses, very specific questions like, have any books been cancelled in your university course, or any books no longer, accessible. They're fishing for stuff to conflate together an accusation which they already have in mind. They're seeking to prove it, and in that sense, it's very counter-scientific. Actually, they're not a dog with a bone. They're a dog asking if anyone's got a bone. And then they go to people who they know will give them solid sort of witty quotes from the House of Commons to sort of to round off that what's been described as a sort of hit job. But the thing is, this came out at a time which is very convenient for the government. At the moment, our Prime Minister is somewhat wounded in the public sphere, so a bit of a distraction was very welcome. But also, the response to this from archaeologists has been interesting as well. Lots of archaeologists, I would say, humbly, sort of at our level, have been talking about this on Twitter and saying this is ridiculous, and other social media, pointing to former articles that they've already written on this sort of subject.
Yes.
Other people, I'd say a little bit higher up the food chain, whether they put themselves there or not, are saying things like, "Oh, this will go away. This is just a symptom of a slow news day."
It's not.
No, it's not.
That is absolutely wrong.
No, but what, as far as we know, actually is the actual response from the sector, because. And I'll just give you, as I've said elsewhere, a little notion. If I was running, for example, CBA, I would at least once a day be tweeting something. But certainly with news stories like this, front page news, I'd say, thank you so much for highlighting archaeology on the front page of your newspaper. You've got a couple of things wrong, though. Here's actually some of the great work that we do. That's what I'd be doing. I'd be putting it. I wouldn't be burying my head in the sand on this, although that is a legitimate PR tactic. Shut up and it'll go away. What, as far as we can tell, is the response from the sector?
What you just said, shut up and it'll go away.
Oh, okay.
I'll quote the final paragraph of the Mail online. Now, anyone like me working in a journalistic method, journalistic way, there are certain things that you have to do with a story. One of which is, if you're going to criticize somebody, you absolutely have to give them a right of reply before publication. And it's what I do with pipeline stories, and we do with watching brief stories. It is absolutely standard practice across the media, and the Mail have obviously done it. They've done their due diligence. But the final paragraph, the article says, quote, "The University of York did not reply to a Mail Online request for comment on the archaeology trigger warning." Right? As you say, what has clearly happened there is the University of York, at a senior level in the press office, has decided, probably in consultation with senior members of the management team, that they're not going to respond. They're not going to defend their course. They're not going to defend their course leader. Because if they did, it just makes in media terms, it quotes, gives the story legs. That is a legitimate approach. And that has, can I just, and that has clearly rippled out into the wider archaeological sphere, because knowing that we were going to be having this discussion, and also because I'm writing an article about it for the pipeline, yesterday I approached the University of York, the Chartered Institute for Archaeologists, and the Council for British Archaeology, and asked them what their response to this was, and in particular, did they feel that that there should be a stronger defence, both of archaeology and of the course leader, who've been subjected to an absolutely unjustified ad hominem attack in a national newspaper, and also what they would do to try and strengthen the position of archaeology going forward. And I got one reply.
Okay.
And it came from the CBA.
Brilliant.
From Neil Redfern, the director of the CBA.
Yep.
And it's as follows. We have been in contact with the University of York Vice Chancellor, no less.
Okay.
The no less is my thing. So quote, we have been in contact
this
with
is at least 2 levels of management up from the department. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This is absolutely at the top of the university food chain.
Yeah.
So the director of the CBA went to the Vice Chancellor of the university.
Mm-hmm.
We have been in contact with the University of York Vice Chancellor and the head of the Department of Archaeology at the university, and will be making no further comments on this story in the interest of protecting the individuals involved from further unnecessary coverage.
Protecting.
Yes.
So her name's out there, and they're protecting her by not talking about it.
Yes.
When they could be promoting her great work, they could be pointing out how wonderful the course is. They could be saying this is not remotely controversial. This is actually good practice and standard practice. And here's all the reasons why. Protecting by being silent.
Yes.
Great job.
Yeah. Now, I would also point another piece of publicity and things that, okay, the university and the CBSO might not like to cite this, but I'm going to put it out there anyway, because it's absolutely in the public domain, because it was said by a High Court judge. And this is covered in Leicestershire Live, and we'll link to it. We mentioned Andrew Bridgen MP earlier. This is in coverage of a case that Mr. Bridgen took against the directors of his family firm. There was a dispute within his family firm. Quoting, a Leicestershire MP lied under oath over the exact circumstances behind his departure from his family's business. That's according to a High Court judge. He also found that the MP had acted in a, quote, abusive and, quote, arrogant way to the company directors. Andrew Bridgen, MP for North West Leicestershire, was criticised by High Court Judge Brian Rawlings following a hearing into years of legal action between Mr. Bridgen, his brother Paul, and their firm AB Produce. The MP had claimed he was forced out of his role in the potato and vegetable business, but this claim was dismissed in court, reports The Times. The judge took a very dim view of the MP, quote, forgetting a conversation he had held with a police inspector regarding his brother's alleged fraudulent activity. The MP was said to have, quote, pressured the officer to look into the claims, which turned out to be false and took up a year of police time, the newspaper reported.
Right.
It's a great CV.
It is, yeah, it is. Rather than advising people on whether or not they should be concerned about viewing dead bodies, maybe he needs to, he's got plenty of other things that he should be thinking about, hasn't he, really?
Again, far be it for me to take, okay, I'm engaging in an absolutely gratuitous ad hominem attack on Andrew Bridgen.
Yeah.
Thing is, he's an MP.
Yeah.
And he's made these opinions, and these things are in the public domain. Mm. York University's course was an academic course, and the course leader in writing that introductory material was exercising an absolutely proper professional duty of care on behalf of the subject sector and on behalf of the university. Mm-hmm. Now, the question I would like, I think, our viewer to consider, and please join the discussion below the line, is when the person who has been subjected to an ad hominem attack by the Mail and by implication, by association, by Mr. Bridgen, is the university then exercising a duty of care towards its member of staff by pretending it hasn't happened, and to its subject course,
particularly with knowledge that FOIs were put in to find this information way ahead of time, particularly given that their job is to sell that course.
Mark, can I just point out, this stuff is actually out there in the public domain. You don't need an FOI to look at a course description.
No, true.
These things are on university websites.
True.
So
true.
A tabloid journal who are notorious for not wanting to do, not doing huge amounts of research. They do the work.
Much work
it's
beyond
research. It's research that is often wanting. And not everybody falls into that category. There are many very good journalists who do a good job and want to do a fair job. and
yes.
follow and absolutely follow the NUJ code of conduct and due diligence, all the rest of it.
Yes. But as I said before, this is a dog looking for a bone. This isn't a dog with a bone.
Absolutely. For a very particular breed of dog looking for a bone.
Looking for a bone that they don't have to go digging too much for. But the thing is, though, as I say, given that the university knew that these and the other universities across the country, they've been talking to each other, but members of staff know that these FOI requests have been going in. Given that it's the York University of York. Sorry, there's a very particular reason why they have a very particular name. I won't go into it. That their job is to sell the course, and also given that this is in the context of a broader query around the value of archaeology that we've seen now for a year in this sector. You think not only is there a question about duty of care, but also a broader question about preparedness for precisely this in the broader cultural context that we've been laying out now for the past 12 months. As I say, look at the links below. Watch the videos that we're pointing to. Other people have been, like a voice in the wilderness now for a year, saying, stuff is happening. We need to have tactics in place. We need to have ready to go information, counterpoints. We need to have an awareness, a day-to-day awareness of what people are actually saying in the news, as opposed to, for example, I won't say which one, but one prominent Twitter-based archaeological spokes body hasn't actually tweeted their own tweets since the 19th of May. As of recording, it's just been a whole lot of retweets. I'm not going. People who watch the Watching Brief will know roughly what we're getting at and the sorts of bodies that we'd like to see doing more. But there's less and less of an excuse here, and particularly as you say, when you come into work and for doing your job, you're being smeared on the front page of a national newspaper, tabloid or not. Where is the duty of care? Where is the line?
Yeah. Precisely. Look, I'll make two quick points just to finish, really. One is, as we've discussed earlier, in 2016, we saw exactly the same story play out in reference to the complex archaeology course at UCL. And UCL took the exact same stance as York have taken, which is to ignore it in the hope it will go away.
Shut up and go away.
Shut up, yeah. As our former education secretary famously said. The education secretary who tried to take higher level funding away from archaeology, but we won't go there. That's another story. The same story played out in 2016. UCL at a senior level took the same view that they weren't going to engage with it. People below that level and people in the archaeological sector, Tony Pollard, me, others, said, actually, no, we need to go out there and put the real story out there. And we did. I would say, to use a political phrase, it's disappointing that the same thing's happening again. And the other thing I would say is this is coming from I won't say fascist because it's very easy to bandy that word around, but I'm going to use it in the quote, the reference I'm about to give you, because basically it's about bullies. This is bullying. This is a big news organization, one of the biggest news organizations in the world, bullying one archaeologist, one named archaeologist. Yeah. And that's pretty offensive to me. And I was at back in the 1990s, I was at an anti-racism conference in East London, and speaking at the conference was there was a then New Labour MP, various other politicians, community workers, and so on. And one of the speakers was an anti-fascist veteran from the Cable Street riot, Cable Street demonstrations, who said to the meeting, there's only one way to confront fascism, and that's on the streets. Now, I happened to be looking at the Labour MP at the time, who looked quite uncomfortable at that thought. Right. But at the same time, it got a big round of applause as well. Because this was, you know, classic East End political activism in being spoken. Now, what I would suggest, you know, people in the sector might like to consider is that, yes, we need to work through mechanisms. Yes, you lobby government, and you have your meetings with ministers and junior ministers and civil servants and so on, and you lobby for your sector and so on. And maybe sometimes you might even tell people what you're doing. Who knows?
God forbid.
Yeah, but also when you're faced with a bully like the Mail and a story like this, maybe archaeologists ought to learn a bit more about street fighting.
Yeah. Particularly when these newspapers are available on every street corner in the country.
Exactly. You know, learn to write those one sentence, 2 lines paragraphs about why archaeology is effing brilliant. And what we do for the good things that happen when archaeologists interact with communities.
Yeah.
And human remains.
Absolutely. Okay, well, that's been our watching brief for the week. It's been slightly meandering. We had lots of thoughts, and frankly, it's been slightly. I think Andy's done quite well to sort of to tone back his response. It's funny. Day one, when I pointed this out to him, he was like, "Oh, it's you know, it's come and go, here today, gone tomorrow, journalism, whatever, you know, blah, blah." And when I was the one going, "But it's front page flipping news, you know, what's going on here?" The next day, I was like, "Yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe we just need to." And you by then you'd looked into the actual circulation of the newspapers and the groups that they're associated with. So I think we've done quite well to sort of to present these ideas for you today. Do continue the conversation below. Do keep on talking about this stuff, and also ultimately, as you say, to keep on talking about why archaeology is effing brilliant. But before you do that, what can you hint at what next week's watching brief might be, Andy?
There was a major maritime news story that broke yesterday about as at the time of recording, so on Friday the 10th of June. About a ship called HMS Gloucester. I suspect come next watching brief, we're going to have a lot more on that.
Very politique of you. Grand. Well, thank you guys for watching.
It's because I'm still researching the story and I've yet to do some due diligence. So,
no, I know, but
I'm
just thinking, oh, there's potentially some really interesting stuff here, but obviously we can't talk about it. Yeah.
No.
Thank you. I'm destroying my office. Thank you guys for watching. Until next time, do take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.